Good evening, everyone. How is everyone doing? Welcome, Karan, Shahid, Crypto Live. It's a very cryptic username. Staying anonymous behind that, I see. Is everyone doing well? Hello from Brazil. Welcome, Rubai, Danny. Great to see you guys. Thank you for joining. We're going to be kicking off in probably 2 or 3 minutes. I'm just going to give everyone a chance to get logged on, and we'll kick off with today's session. In the meantime, just before we formally kick off, if you guys have any questions related to your trading psychology, any challenges that you're going through, managing emotions that you would like answered by myself live on the call today, feel free to pop them in the chat. And I'm going to leave some time at the end of the session to try and go through some of the top comments. J-Box, Karan, how you doing? Crypto Live, yes, originally, but I live permanently in the UK. Born and bred in the UK. How has everyone's day been? Active in the markets? Anyone made money, lost money? Shahid, thank you for your question. I'm going to save a response for this for the end of the session, if that's all right. I'm going to keep it for Q&A because I think what you've experienced is probably pretty common. I think a lot of people will feel the same thing, and I'll try and give you some guidance on that today. Karan, yeah, couple losses. Okay, another 1 or 2 minutes, and we'll kick off with the session today. Entered into a trade on NASDAQ. Nice. Good job, Crypto Live. Always good to see. Thank you for the question, Nathan. How to master patience when holding on to a good trade. Great question. I will also save that for the end. We'll have a little discussion on that. Holding on to win trades. Okay, I'll give it another 30 seconds and then we'll get started with today. Thank you for the question, Crypto Live. How to manage over trading? Again, great question. How to manage over trading. Controlling emotions. When you're already in a trade, you end up cutting short. Okay, so also about holding winners. J-Box, I see your question. I think I would say probably most of the questions so far, they're going to be tackled by one of the things that we're going to be discussing in today's session. So I think the content and the education that we're going to go through is going to be quite helpful for you guys. I'm going to leave you guys with something to take away from today, which is going to help you understand a little bit about how the mind works and what you can do about it going forward. Okay, so let's dive in. Firstly, thank you to everyone for taking time out of your day to tune in. I'm not going to keep you for too long. This is going to be the first of many sessions that I'm working with FundedNext. I like to keep these sessions lighthearted. I like to get to know everyone that shows up week in and week out. We're looking to build a really strong community here at FundedNext. We want a team of traders that are all inspired to achieve the same things, learn, progress, and just become better versions of themselves. So outside of that, obviously, there is going to be a lot of education that I give, primarily based all on psychology. I know there's a lot of resources out there at the moment that talk about strategies and how to make money in the markets. And actually, I want to talk about how to make money, but from the other side. I want to talk about how do you actually make money by becoming a better loser. That's kind of the topic of the broad-based topic of what we're going to be discussing, and how becoming a better loser will actually help you make more money in the long run as a trader. Danny, the session's going to be about 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, so the purpose of today's session, firstly, to introduce myself to you guys. I know some of you are going to be seeing me for the first time. And again, like I said, it's going to be first of many sessions, and I hope we're going to have many more conversations as we go through week by week. I want to discuss everything related to your trading psychology and how we can start to improve that throughout the weeks that we work together. So we're going to be talking about everything that you guys have discussed today: handling losses, dealing with emotions, how do you remain disciplined, how do you improve your levels of patience, you know, any questions that you guys have, even as to I advertise in my picture. I can promise you I'm not Twitter's biggest catfish. There is a reason behind everything, and I will explain as the weeks go on. So I want to start by just explaining what my niche areas are. So I work as a trading performance coach, and I've worked exclusively with traders now since 2020, so going on about 3 years. And the two areas I help traders with most are related to their habits and their mindset. So for me, the two of those are kind of linked together, because we as humans, we all have habitual physical actions and we all have habitual mental actions. So we think in the same way every day, and we tend to act in the same ways every day. And a lot of the reason as to why people struggle to make progress in certain areas of their life is because it fits in line with the age-old quote: if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And when it comes to trading specifically, I think there is a certain pattern of thinking that most traders tend to adopt, which keeps them stuck in the same cycles. And until you learn how to break out of those mental thought patterns, it's almost impossible to change your actions if you're not thinking differently right from the get-go. So that is going to be a core concept of what we start to touch on here. How do we start to think differently from the majority of people that end up losing money week in and week out? Now, for anyone that's seen me on a live call before, I tend to start off my demonstrations about why I focus on psychology a little bit lighthearted. I tend to kick them off with a little bit of a magic trick. So for those of you that haven't met me before, I actually used to work as a magician many, many years ago. And now I use it to serve simple examples as to how it can help people in real life as a trader. So for example, if I was to give this deck a little bit of a shuffle, and we take the card on top, we have the 10 of spades. If for this example, we're going to say the 10 represents a consistently profitable trader. This is what everybody on this stream is aspiring to achieve. Either they're trying to become consistently profitable, or they're trying to take their trading to the next level. And you see what happens is, if you look at a consistently profitable trader on the surface, all you see is the 10. But actually, if you look beneath the surface, you actually find that a consistently profitable trader is made up of only 80% makes up their psychology, and 20% only makes up their strategy. But what I tend to find is, even though mindset makes up the majority of what you do day in and day out on the markets, most of the people spend their time here. They focus on the strategy, and nobody is really focusing on the mindset. And that's what we're hoping to change throughout this. So why focus on the psychology? Because it impacts absolutely everything that we do. If you never learn to change how you think on a day-to-day basis, you're never going to change how you feel. And if you don't learn to change how you feel, you will always act the same way. And if you always act the same way, you'll have the same habits. And ultimately, who you are as a person is just a collection of your habits. So everything that we're aiming to do is unpacking this, unpacking the mind. How do we start to think differently? Now, why am I a good fitting person to talk to you about this? Well, I've been trading for about 10 years, and I started in late 2011 going on 2012. For the first 6 years of my journey, I lost money. Every single month, every single year, I had 0 breakthroughs during that time. So I feel like I've had a lot of experience doing things the wrong way. And I unfortunately had to go through a lot of pain to try and figure out how to start thinking correctly. And the only time I started working on my mindset was the only time I actually started to have breakthroughs with my trading. Now, I never believe I'm some ideal level of perfection when it comes to trading. I always believe I'm a work in progress. But I believe when I started working on my mindset is when I started to see my progress curve really skyrocket and actually break out of the patterns that I was stuck in for so long. So what I want to explain to you guys is, you may have heard, and I'm sure some of you will have experienced, that the only certainty in trading is that the market is uncertain. You will find day in and day out, the market will have a new way to surprise you. Some days you may think it's completely readable, and some days you'll have no idea what's going on. But in all my years of experience, the one thing I can tell you is that you will encounter a losing streak at some point. And the reason I say that is because I have been through many of them. I mean, I went through 6 years of it before I managed to actually break out and do something differently. And actually, the timing of this stream in particular is ironic, because I'm actually going through a losing streak at the moment. So not only am I going to be teaching you about some of the concepts and things that I've picked up over the last decade that I've been in the markets, but you're going to see me preach them and do them live, because this is currently what I'm going through. I experience all the same emotions. I have all the same frustrations. The difference is how I react to those emotions. And that's what we're going to start unpacking today. Now, I want to start to, before we get into the meat of this session, I want to start to unpack why most people never actually have a breakthrough with their trading. Now, you see, what most traders do is they tend to discover a problem, whether it's they believe it's to do with their psychology, whether it's their strategy. It can be absolutely any area of life. They discover a problem. Now, what the typical person does is, when they discover a problem, if they are proactive and actually try and be better grown and developed individuals, they try and find a resolution to that problem. And actually, that sounds like quite a logical thing to do. You identify a problem and you try and find a resolution to that problem. And where most people end up stuck is actually in that paradigm. They get stuck between identifying a problem and actually resolving that problem. And I find the step in the middle that actually most people miss is asking themselves and delving into understanding, why do you have that problem in the first place? So I presume everyone that has joined this call has joined for a particular reason, to improve their trading psychology. They want to understand more about the mind, and that's either because you're trying to become a consistently profitable trader, or you're trying to take your trading to the next level. You've already experienced a little bit of success, but you're trying to break through to the next level up. And what I want to help you understand today is why. Why do you have certain problems? Why does your mind seem to work against you in so many different scenarios? And you can only start to understand that by joining sessions exactly like this, where I'm going to do nothing more than by helping explain exactly why the mind does certain things and how we can start to overcome them now that we truly understand the nature of the problem. So I want to kick off today by actually explaining the fundamental reason as to why trading is so hard. It's not because analysis is difficult. It's not because you can't hold on to winners or you can't cut your losers. Those are all symptoms of the underlying problem. You see, the underlying reason as to why trading is so hard is because there is an inverse relationship between good actions and results, and also bad actions and results. Now, what do I mean by this? In any normal thing that you do in life, or how most people have been brought up to believe, if you work hard, if you take good actions, if you do all the right things, it will eventually lead to a good and beneficial outcome in life. And that could be true of many different things. However, in trading, you're working in an uncertain market. So that might mean one day you step up to the charts, you do everything right as per your strategy, you follow your risk management, you execute as you should, you cut when you should, but you lose money. And on the flip side, you could do everything wrong. You could gamble, you could break all your rules, you could risk more than you should. And actually, instead of being punished for that, like you would in most aspects of life, you may actually be rewarded with a profit. Now, the reason as humans this is so difficult to digest is because the mind is actually geared to drive you to do things which reward you. Now, if you understand that concept for a second, the mind is geared to do things which are rewarding, but actually rewards in trading are distributed almost at random. Okay, you could do everything right or everything wrong and be rewarded, or you could do everything right and everything wrong and actually lose money. So it makes it difficult for the mind to comprehend what is the right thing and what is the wrong thing. And this is something we're going to discuss a whole lot more about how to overcome that specific dynamic. But ultimately, you have to understand what they call in psychology here is they call this phenomenon a cognitive dissidence. Now, in this aspect, it's where traders have two different beliefs. They believe that by doing the right things, they should be rewarded, but they're also seeing in front of their eyes that good actions don't always yield good results. So this creates confusion in their head, and this is where your emotions start to play out. This is where you become amplified with many different fears, which causes you to make mistakes in your trading. Now, all of this is to do with the uncertain nature of the market. And I would say probably 80 to 90% of your problems are to do with the fact that you haven't truly accepted right from the get-go that the markets are an uncertain place. You see, the thing that you have to understand is that in the short term, the outcome of every trade that you take is going to be random. You could do everything right. You could plot all the right levels. You can follow your strategy, which has a 90% win rate. But the moment you hit execute, absolutely anything can happen in the markets. And that is why in the short term, your results are random. The only thing we can rely on as traders is thinking in larger sample sizes, right? Understanding that it's not about what happens on the next trade. It's about what happens over the next 100 trades, and start to thinking larger sample sizes. Now, talking of how the mind works and how we can actually start to overcome this problem with the inverse relationship between good and bad, I want to explain a little bit deeper about what the mind actually does to trick us into doing things that may not necessarily be in our best interest as a trader. So bear with me 1 second. I'm going to pull up a presentation. Mr. Bazooka, I see your question about getting back to bad habits. And that is exactly related to what we've just discussed here. The mind has typically been rewarded for a bad habit, and that's what draws you back to it time and time again. And it's going to be something that we focus on and discuss how to overcome this. But before I can take you to that, before I can give you resolution, what you actually have to focus on is understanding why the mind acts and does certain things in the way that it does. So can I just get a quick confirmation from everyone on the call that you can see the presentation up on the screen? Okay, I'm hoping everyone can see the presentation. So, perfect. Thank you for the confirmation. So the first thing I want to discuss, we're going to start talking about unpacking the mind. Unpacking the mind involves understanding a concept which I learned about from a fantastic book called The Chimp Paradox. If anyone has read that, be sure to let me know in the chat, but it is a phenomenal book. If anyone hasn't read it, I would highly recommend putting it on your reading list, as it's going to give you a great understanding as to how the human mind works. So the Chimp Paradox is actually written by a psychiatrist. I believe he's from the UK, and his name is Steve Peters. And what he describes in his book is how the mind actually has two modes of operation. We have system one, which is what he describes as our chimp mentality. And we have system two, which is our more normal human brain, as we would know it. Now, system one and system two actually work together. And a lot of times in life, they work in perfect harmony. They can complement each other. And in other aspects of life, they can actually be very detrimental. And the reason I bring this up, no surprise, is because as a trader, understanding how system one and system two work in our minds is super important to understanding why we think the way we think, why we feel the way we feel, and what we can start to do about it. So system one, the chimp mind, it works very, very quickly. There is this statistic, I believe, in the book, and I think it says 98% roughly of all our decisions initially come from system one, right? Every initial thought, every reaction that we tend to have tends to come from system one. It is the faster working brain. It tends to work automatically. It tends to happen unconsciously. And usually it happens without our physical awareness. It's often why we snap at certain things. We have a quick reaction. It comes from system one, right? We don't need to actually put any physical effort behind it to understand why the mind does certain things. On the opposite side of this, we have system two. System two is the human side of us. His system two is a very slow working side to the mind. It actually happens with full awareness. It carries very logical thoughts, and it allows us to have very rational thoughts about what happens in our everyday life. So system one is that gut feeling. It's that quick response. It's that knee-jerk reaction. It's the impulsive actions that we take. System two is the logical, slow working. It's the rational example. Now, the best example I can give you of how this works, and I'm sure every single person would have experienced this at some point in their life, is, have you ever been in an argument or frustrated and you've snapped at someone and you've said or done something which you didn't mean? Right? You've been in an argument with a friend, a family member, a coworker, and you've snapped and you've said something that you really shouldn't have said. And in the moment, it just came out. Right? You had no control over it. That was system one. Right? Full inaction. That is exactly how it works day in and day out. Let's talk about something that we've all been through. Trading. Have you ever done something in the heat of the moment? Doubled up a position size, got straight back into a position, over traded because you were frustrated by what happened on the outcome of your last trade. Exactly that, Mr. Bazooka, right? You have those impulse reactions, and then what do you feel later on? Regret. Where does regret come from? It comes from the logical side of your mind, system two, right? System one gives you that initial knee-jerk reaction. You take some time, you process what has happened, you allow your system two mind to start to kick in, and what do you feel? You think back to that scenario and you be like, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have put that second trade on, third trade on. I shouldn't have doubled my lot size. But that's system two in action. And the only difference that tends to separate system one and system two is time. Okay? Time is the big separator between those two mindsets. It's often why you need to cool down after you've had an argument. It's often why it's advised you need to step away after you've had a losing trade, right? Because what is happening in the mind is you need to pull yourself out of that environment to allow time to sink in for your system two mind to kick in. Once system two kicks in, you can actually think more clearly. right? So all we need to do is, now that we understand we have a system 1 and system 2 mind, you need to build your process, your trading strategy, in a way that allows you to have time between taking your next action after you feel some kind of emotion, after some kind of outcome in your trading. Okay, so that's what we need to learn to train. Now, in the real world, something that I want you guys to understand is, between system 1 and system 2, there is no good or bad mindset. The mind doesn't know good or bad. It doesn't characterize it in that way. There are just certain situations where system 1 is good and certain situations where system 2 is good, right? But actually, like I said, they work perfectly in harmony, and there are certain situations where each of those will be a fitting mind to work from. But the reason I explain this is because I don't want you to look at your mind like the enemy. That is actually the worst thing you could do. The mind is actually trying to help you. The mind is trying to serve you. And the mind's primary purpose in terms of how it impacts us as a trader is to avoid pain. That is exactly what the mind is trying to get you to do. So how exactly does that happen? How does this impact our trading specifically? Well, you'll see in the diagram, in the graph that I've put up on the screen, on the left side, you've got your general thoughts and feelings throughout the day as a trader, and then the actual real reason behind them. So as I mentioned, your mind's primary purpose is to avoid pain. So for example, when you feel FOMO that's luring you into the market, what you're feeling is your mind is actually trying to ensure that you don't miss out on an opportunity to make money. Your mind is recalling an experience that you've had where you've watched the market go without you, and you sat there and calculated how much money or points you could have made but didn't. And the mind is simply trying to help you to not to make that same mistake again, right? How about our second scenario? Doubling up on your risk after a loss. What is the mind trying to achieve by helping you do that? Well, actually, it's trying to help you recoup your lost money, to stop the feeling of pain that it initially caused. It's trying to get you out of that feeling of pain as quickly as possible. So I use these as specific examples because they tend to impact most traders that are stuck in bad patterns. And again, what I want you to understand is the mind is not against you. The reason you feel frustration towards what you feel is because you don't fully understand what the mind is trying to accomplish. And what I want you to do is actually make friends with your mind, be at peace with your mind. And it's only once you start to do that, you can actually start to process and accept what you're feeling and move on. You see, most people start to try and fight the mind with resistance. And what we want to do is actually approach it from a place of acceptance. And once you accept what the mind is offering, you'll actually find you don't have to fight with the mind. You can let certain things go and choose to do something differently if you know it won't serve you. So as a trader, and I'm sure you can understand, it is way more beneficial to make the majority of our decisions from system 2. Now, again, on many of the sessions that we have week in and week out, we're going to be discussing how to make more decisions from system 2. The best thing that you could start to do at the moment is actually keep a journal of your thoughts, right? This is the best exercise and the number one thing I want you to take away from today's session. Now that you're actually fully aware and have the knowledge to understand that system 1 and system 2 actually exists, what you need to do is try to figure out, how does that apply to you? Because me giving you that knowledge is great, but unless you actually take that knowledge and apply it in your own life, it's going to be meaningless, right? So you have to actually take the exercise that I'm giving you and start to understand, how does this impact me specifically? Because I could show you examples of how this works for me, but how it works for me doesn't guarantee it works the same way for you. What makes trading difficult, on top of everything we've already discussed, is that it's a very individual thing, right? Everyone experiences different emotions, different fears, and we have to work out what works best for us. So what I want you to start doing is categorizing and journaling your thoughts on a day-to-day basis. So I've given you a couple examples of here, one trading related and one non-trading related, and how you can actually separate these between system 1 and system 2. So for example, system 1 might initially respond to the idea that you've missed a trade in the morning and your mind is pushing you to chase a certain position, right? But later on in the day, you may reflect on that same scenario after time has taken place, and you may understand that not sticking to your plan is going to cost you money in the long run. The best thing you can do in that moment is to walk away and wait for the next setup, right? That's system 2, that's logical. And I want you to start documenting the difference between those and how they appear in your everyday life. Let's look at scenario 2. A colleague or a neighbor has said something which has annoyed you and forced you to say something rude back to them, right? That's your initial knee-jerk response. And then later on, as it was mentioned in the chats, you go and regret it. And logically, when you think back to that scenario, you would say, well, they probably didn't have any bad intentions about what they said. It was just that they delivered it in the wrong way. And ultimately, they're not a bad person. And you shouldn't have snapped back at them, right? So you need to start to separate system 1 and system 2. This is going to happen in your personal life. This is going to happen in your business life. This is going to happen in your trading. And you want to start to do this for every area of life, because the one thing I can tell you from my experience is how you do something is how you do everything. If you want to become a better trader, you have to start to learn to manage your emotions in your personal life, in your business, in your relationships, in your friendships, in your romantic life, right? This isn't just about becoming a better trader. This is about developing and growing as a person. And the first step to overcoming and making more decisions from system 1 or system 2, depending on the scenario, and actually having a choice between those, is being aware that they exist and understanding how they impact you day in and day out. So, what is our time together? What does our time together hold in terms of what we're going to be doing in these sessions going forward? So as I mentioned, I like to keep the educational segments quite short, quite snappy. And what you're going to see going forward is every educational session that I deliver on a weekly basis is going to be supported with an exercise that I want each and every one of you to take part in. And the primary reason behind that is because what you find will happen in most areas of life, most courses that you attend, and what we want to do differently here at FundedNext is we want to give you more than just knowledge, right? Knowledge is fantastic, but unless you learn to actually apply it, it's meaningless, right? And this is why I like to end every session with an exercise. But even the exercise can be great. However, you have to actually do the exercise. And so what we are actually trying to create here at FundedNext is we don't just want to give you the knowledge, we also want to provide you with the accountability. We want a community of people to group together that are all learning the right ways in order to think, to become better people overall, and subsequently better traders. And we want to instill that in you by giving you the knowledge, giving you practical ways in order to apply that knowledge, but then also creating that community to hold you accountable to be able to apply that, right? So I'm working with the team at FundedNext, and we're working on ways to keep you engaged, committed to the process. And for those of you that are up for the challenge of creating change in your life from a business and a personal level, you need the best of both worlds. You need knowledge and accountability. And we're bringing this to you absolutely free, right? So this is what we're trying to create, a community of traders that are empowered with the right knowledge in terms of understanding how to think about trading and combining knowledge and accountability going forward to get you to become better thinkers and ultimately better traders, right? So we've got some exciting things for you coming up throughout the weeks. I've got some great exercises lined up for you all. And I'm working with the team to see if we can get the most active people inside of these exercises that we give you week in and week out to be rewarded for their hard work and dedication to becoming and growing to be better people with accounts, right? We're working on giving people challenges, right? So you've seen many of the giveaways that FundedNext are already doing. We want to reward the people that are actually committed to doing the right things, to growing to be better people. And as promised, that brings a close to our educational side. I want to go through a little bit of Q&A, and I know we had a few questions given right from the very get-go. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing for a second, and I want to go back and answer a few questions that got posed right at the very beginning. So one of the first questions we had through was, I had a $200 trade which hit break even, and I wasn't able to control my emotions, and I blew my account. How do I deal with this, right? Well, the first thing I would say is it goes back to your expectations, right? What did you expect when you put the trade on initially when you did? And this is a question for the entire group, right? What was your expectation the moment you executed a position? Right? As you guys are thinking about this, what I want you to understand is me asking you this is a little bit of a loaded question, because regardless of what you tell me here, I already know the answer based on the outcome of your question, right? Because you had a trade that went and hit break even, and actually your emotions got the best of you. The problem, the underlying root problem with that is your expectations going into the trade were that you were hoping to make a profit from that trade. Now, you see, in an uncertain environment, the moment you introduce emotion behind what you want out of that position, hitting your target, making some money on that trade, it goes and creates an expectation of what you want. Now, when that expectation is not met, what do you feel? Disappointment, sadness, anger, frustration, right? So in order to really resolve that problem, it comes back to you accepting the uncertain nature of the market, right? You have to train your expectations. The biggest thing I want you to take away is I want you to ask yourself, based on what we have learned today, when you jump back into the market, lost control of your emotions and blew your account, what mind was in control? Was it system 1 or system 2? Right? Very important thing to ask yourself. System 1 or system 2, because I can guarantee you that trade was probably done out of impulse. It was probably based off of emotion and not logic. And those are all characteristics of system 1. So managing your expectations before you even get into a position is vital. You shouldn't expect a profit to be made. You shouldn't expect a loss to be made. You should expect that you have done a certain amount of work and there is a probability that something may happen, right? There is a probability that over the next 100 trades, a certain outcome is more likely. But in my next given particular trade, I just expect that the market will move. Whether it gives me a profit, whether it gives me a loss is meaningless. Okay? Again, we're going to be expanding on this a lot more. How to fully manage your expectations, how to train your mind to start to think in that way. But we have to take this step by step, right? Like I said, the problem that what we are trying to do differently is we're not going from problem to resolution. We're going from problem to fully understanding why we have that problem, and then giving you a more realistic resolution, which is going to give you the lasting change that you're looking for. Second question that I had, how do I hold on to my winning trades? Great question. I'm sure many people have been there. I've been there. I know I have, right? Let me ask you this, and again, question for everybody in the chat. What was the primary reason you closed your position? What was the primary reason you closed your position? Right? Because the chances are, if you didn't hold on to it for as long as you said or wanted to, you closed it because you were scared, right? You were scared of one particular thing. You were scared of losing money. You were scared of seeing your profit disappear, right? You were scared of all that hard work that you had done up until that point go to waste and disappear. Exactly that, fear of reducing profits, right? What is the number one tip that I can give people to reducing the amount of fear related to holding winning trades? Reduce your account size. Okay, this is going to work specifically for people that are fearing money, right? They have a fear of losing a certain level of their account balance. There are a few different reasons, but that is probably one of the most common ones. And if you are worried about losing money, go back to trading smaller account sizes. It might mean dropping your account size by half, a quarter, a tenth, whatever it is. But there is going to be a certain level of account size that you can trade, that you can execute and manage positions from a place of process rather than emotion. When you learn to do that, what you need to do is then scale up in increments, because the best way to overcome emotions is to gradually increase your exposure. And one of the biggest problems that most traders have that are working with prop firms and taking their challenges is they shoot for an account size that they are not emotionally equipped to deal with yet, right? They see that they can trade 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, whatever account size it is that you're working with. You're trying to shoot for that level because you are hoping and want to become that success that you know you can be as quickly as possible. But that is the primary thing that's holding you back. You're trying to level up on the outside before you've leveled up on the inside. And I can promise you, whilst it may seem like taking a step back in terms of lowering your account size, you're actually going to be taking that one step back to go 2 steps forward in the following weeks and months to come once you've trained your mind to work the right way. Okay, so a couple other questions that we had. Fearing retracements, how to manage overtrading. Okay, so overtrading and dealing with retracements. A lot of that comes down to noise in the mind, right? If you're fearing a retracement, you're actually fearing and not having enough trust in your system playing out over a given period of time, right? If you are someone that is overtrading and you're working outside of your plan, there is one specific thing that you could be doing to help with both of those things, right? Managing the general emotions of what you feel during that time. So one of them we already covered when it comes to emotions, and it's about changing your expectations. The flip side of changing your expectations is actually managing your perspective, right? Because what you're fearing most when you're watching a market retrace while you're in it is, what is your mind focused on, right? You're focused on how much money you could potentially lose. The flip side of that is flipping your perspective and wondering how much money you could potentially make on the upside, right? Have you ever been in a trade and gone up a time frame and saw what would happen had you just left the trade alone, right? You took a trade, you closed it for 1 or 2 hours, and then you switched to an hourly, a 4-hour chart, a daily chart, and you saw actually you caught the bottom or top of a low or a high that's set in place. And had you done absolutely nothing, you'd be in a far better position than you're in now, right? All of that is to do with the noise in your mind and what you are fearing and focusing on in that moment. So one of the best things that you can start to do to control the noise in your mind is take on a habit of meditation. And this is something I'm going to be talking a whole lot about because I am a huge advocate of meditation and the benefits it can have for traders. And we're going to have specific exercises week on week that help you to get started with meditation. Trading less can make our mind strong and disciplined. 100%. 100%. Now, the reason that is because your mind kind of operates like a phone battery, right? When your phone is fully charged and it's up to 100%, it's efficient. Everything works smoothly. Now, the more and more you use your phone, the more and more your performance is depleted and the more sluggish the performance will get. I know this firsthand. I've got an iPhone, and the moment it gets below 10% or 5%, my phone starts to get sluggish. The mind works exactly the same way, right? Every time you make a decision, specifically about trading throughout the day, you're making your mind, you're taxing your mind, right? You're reducing its level of willpower and discipline that you have left. So trading less is going to make your mind stronger because you have more energy to give the right decisions, right? It's going to help you make the right decisions when you really need them. I think the last question that I had was specifically regarding controlling certain emotions. Again, meditation is really going to help with this. Managing emotions is going to be a huge section that we deal with, but meditation is going to be huge. And the reason I'm such a big advocate of meditation is what meditation does for you as a trader is create space, right? The moment you sit down every day to observe your thoughts on a daily basis, you start to understand that who you are and what you think are 2 different things. Just because you feel angry, it doesn't mean that you have to act on anger. Just because you feel sad or frustrated It doesn't mean you have to act on those emotions, right? Every day that you sit down to meditate, what you tend to see is how much your mind chops and changes and jumps all over the place. The moment you begin to understand that, you start to understand that who you are and what you do are two separate things. Two completely separate things. With the space that you create, space will give you time, right? The time allows you to make a choice. So where previously an emotion will become, you'll become aware of an emotion fueled by system one, what typically happens is most people operate on that emotion on autopilot and they take action based on that emotion, right? What meditation will teach you to do is create space between the emotion and what you have to do. Space gives you time, and time is going to give you a choice as to what action you want to take next. So instead of impulsively jumping back into the market, you get time to ask yourself, is jumping back in the best thing for me? Because based on the last 10 times I rushed back into the market, it didn't do anything beneficial for me. So actually, maybe the best thing for me right now is to walk away. Where does that thought come from? System two. System two is created through what? Time. Meditation creates awareness. Awareness creates space. Space gives you time. Time gives you choices. Okay. Last one that comes in. I can't control myself and force trades, but when the real setup comes in, I close them early, right? This is a standard example of a trader not trading what they see about the market. They're trading what they feel about the market, right? The first thing I want you to do, Karan, when you talk about this issue that you feel like you're having, is I want you to become aware of your language. One of the things that I do as a coach is I start to observe language patterns because it's an insight as to what people truly believe in their life, right? Your specific question says, I can't control myself. You are telling yourself that you can't control yourself. I want to tell you today that a lack of discipline when it comes to executing on that real position or cutting that trade early, when it comes to the discipline around that, discipline is not something that you're born with. Discipline is something that you do. Discipline is a skill. Discipline can be trained. So if you are someone watching this stream and you are saying that I am feeling like I am undisciplined, I want you to recognize that being undisciplined is nothing more than a bad habit. And the reason that is a bonus is because bad habits are trained. Most people come into this world, or actually I would argue all people come into this world completely neutral, right? Everybody comes in on a blank slate. That means every bad habit that you've adopted that is impacting you and holding you back as a trader is a learned behavior. The more you start to unpack and understand how the mind works, you're going to start to understand how to break free of these patterns and how to undo some of that learning that is holding you back and how to reprogram new positive beneficial trains of thought. Okay, so I want you to understand that discipline is not something that you have or don't have. It's something that you do or don't do. Okay, and we're going to be working on training your discipline by helping you to understand exactly what the mind does. To give you the shortest fix that you can start to implement off today, just before I wrap this up, if you want to become more disciplined, slow down the mind between system one and system two, because that is the big difference between acting on impulse and taking actions out of your process. How do you do that? Create a checklist before you get into any trade. Has it met A, B, and C criteria? Has it met X, Y, and Z criteria? All you are doing by creating that checklist that you have to tick off is creating and giving your mind time to separate thought from action, right? And what we learned about today is thought and action is the difference between system one and system two, right? I remember somebody mentioning earlier, we're kicking out the chimp mind. We're not even kicking it out. We're going to learn to operate with it. Remember, the mind is not the enemy. We're going to learn to make it our best friend, and we're going to learn to overcome all of these obstacles together. Right? I don't want to keep you guys too long. Thank you all for the kind comments. Thank you all for the feedback. Thank you all for being very, very interactive. It's been a pleasure to present to you guys today. And as I mentioned, it's going to be the first of many weekly sessions. If you've enjoyed today's presentation, if you've enjoyed the session, if you have any further questions, Be sure you're following FundedNext on Twitter, on Instagram. I myself am also available. You can find me on Trading in the Now on Twitter and Instagram. So if you have any following questions, please feel free to shoot them on those platforms. And we've got a lot more work to do together. And I'm excited to see how you will progress going forward. Thank you all for your time. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you all again very, very soon. Take care, guys. Thank you very much.